Hi, I'm Rock and Roll Snaggletooth, and we are going to be doing a retrospective on the legendary Sadus. Now, Sadus started out in 1984 as kind of a thrash metal band, but not too long after, they turned into a death thrash metal band. The band started out with Steve DiGiorgio, Darren Travis, Rob Moores, and Ron Allen. Now, this will comprise the most legendary demo for 1986, DTP, which stands for Death to the Posers. Then after this, they pretty much made one of the best death thrash metal albums of the 80s. And that brings us on to Illusions. Now, when they made Illusions, they weren't signed to an actual record label. They were still doing it independently, which I always looked up to that as being just something like I looked up to. Illusions, in a sense, kind of holds the same thing as Creator's Pleasure to Kill or Pestilence, Malia's Mouth of Harm. It has that same type of death thrash, but a little bit more technical. I mean, I hear a lot of stuff that reminds me of the first Morbid Angel album. I think they were definitely one of the hot bands at the time, because you see people back then starting having homemade patches of them, and you see people like having their t-shirts. Until 1989, they released another demo. I forgot what it was called, and they got signed to Roadrunner. Now, they didn't like the cover of Illusions. Well, Roadrunner didn't like the cover of Illusions, so they re-released it back in 1991 to be Chemical Exposure. Now, to be honest, I more likely like the original cover than Chemical Exposure, but that doesn't change the fact that this album is badass. Like, the bass playing, everything on this album just slays beginning to end. There's no weak tracks, there's no nothing. It's like, I would say the tracks I would suggest highly off this is probably the track Illusions or Certain Death. And if you're a fan of death metal or thrash metal and you do not own this album, like I said in the Possessed retrospective, you're fucking up, because this is a classic, really, really classic album that I feel like a lot of people should have in their collection. Around the same time, Steve DiGiorgio was doing side projects for Death, and well, he didn't do a side project for Death. He started playing live with them during the Screenplay Gore time, and before Chuck had a steady lineup. Then after that, he got offered to do Autopsy, Severed Survival as guest bassist. I just think Steve is one of those characters that's an amazing bass player beginning to end. He has just his playing was unorthodox. I always looked up to that. Which leads us to the second Sadus album, Swallowed in Black. Now, Swallowed in Black, it's an album, in my opinion, that is a little bit slept on, but it's still classic. Um, I always loved this album because this one is when they got a lot more technical than the first album. I mean, I hear a lot of stuff that I would hear from Ripping Corpse on Swallowed in Black, because Swallowed in Black, it has more technicality to it. Like, you hear more bass parts that are just just technical as hell. Like, even like I could see where like the guys like Alex Webster and Roger Patterson from Atheist took their influence from, because the bass parts on this album are insane. Like, Swallowed in Black, it has like some intricate bass parts and a few other parts. I think Manifestation. A lot of the tracks off this is really fucking good. They have some super catchy riffs. Like, a lot of the songs, the lyrics that go on this are probably about like most of them are about like human waste and like shit of that matter, like environment, like, you know, global warming. It really goes with that, and it kind of reminds me of like Revenant, like dying of Prophecy of a Dying World. It has the same type of lyrical themes. Sadus, the tracks that I really enjoyed off of this, every track I enjoyed. Good Riddance, Swallowed in, like, title track Black, what else? Everything on this was just heavy as hell. Like, and Darren Travis, his vocals on this are nuts. Like, it just reminds me of someone that was like abused as a child and literally gets still abused in real life, but in a sense, just like the hauntings. It's super fucking cool. Which leads us to the next album, 1992's A Vision of Misery. Now, A Vision of Misery is kind of where my, well, I wouldn't say taste in it ends, because there are parts on it I like. To be honest, A Vision of Misery, it's good, but they start getting like, I don't know why, I want to call it like, where I start kind of disliking it a little bit, but they still have good parts that like, you know, that still have that energy of Illusions and Swallowed in Black. It just gets a little bit too technical. It's like kind of how, well, not really. Kind of how Gorguts went, but not as shit. Like, you know, obviously Obscura is terrible, but this is nothing close to Obscura. This is a lot better. You know, I feel like they start going downhill after this album. And Steve was doing other projects like Death and Testament after this, so you didn't really see that much Sadus. So this is where kind of it ends in a sense, and the band pretty much gets dropped from Roadrunner because Roadrunner at first, well, Roadrunner never supported them. They gave them really shit tour support. Like, you know, there's interviews with Darren Travis saying that the label pretty much fucked them over and didn't really do that much for them. And I think, to be honest, Roadrunner has a good roster, but for being like a label that manages bands and stuff, they don't do as well. I mean, they only do it well to like the bands that give them more money, but obviously that's what a label does. I'm not going to make that rant because that could be for another fucking day. To be honest, like, they kind of go downhill after this. It's like, it's a good album. Like, trust me, the first 3 albums are great. But they kind of a little bit go downhill. It's still worth getting, though. Even though thrash was kind of dying around this time, when it, like, around 92 and, like, almost the end of 91, I feel like it started going downhill, but definitely worth checking out. I am Rock and Roll Snaggletooth, and I'm signing off.
Hey, Ryan here. Demon Master Reviews here. When I asked Xavier here about Sadus here, he said he didn't want to do their most recent albums, and I did get him to get a comment for that, and here is his response.
How am I gonna put it? I never really gave a shit after the first three, because once I looked at the album covers, I'm like, there's no point in me even listening to this.